little background. I sent you the articles. He had a contributor who basically, he writes in on a regular basis. He does different scenarios, and I truly believe that some of the scenarios are based on real life, but he's, in his articles that he writes, he kind of says, okay, you're the broker, here's a challenging scenario, how would you address this? And he kind of gives it from the perspective of an agent, a broker, and an attorney, because he's also an attorney. In this last post that he did, he was talking about a broker interviewing a couple of ladies that were a team that wanted to come to a brokerage, and in the broker's opinion, the women were not dressed appropriately. They were talking about, that he felt like they were more dressed for a nightclub and that kind of thing. And it really got me thinking about the perspective of, this inclination that you have to be dressed a certain way to be considered professional. And that's where I came across, the idea of, well, let's dig deeper on this. First of all, we're talking about something that is, a gendered thing that he's talking about in here, trying to hold professional dress codes. This is how a man should dress professionally. This is how a woman should dress professionally. And then I said, well, let's back this up even further. And, what are these standards that we're basing these rules from? How old are these rules? I mean, these are like decades old etiquette that we're trying to follow. And how does this necessarily hold up in our post-pandemic society? And I was talking to my editor, Danny, and she was just like, we need to get some more perspectives on this. And you immediately came to mind. I would just love for you to kind of dive deep and kind of walk me through, what do you think some of the challenges women face when they're trying to dress professionally, and especially in this industry?
Absolutely, Rachel. And thank you for thinking of me. I'm happy to help. Hopefully I give you something that you can use, but I wanted to, the moment I read through kind of the email that you sent, I had to get our boy, Mark Zuckerberg. So that's just an Instagram of him. And I'm like, he does presentations that are unveiling new products, right? And sometimes, like this example I just put in the chat, he looks like he took his shirt out of the laundry, and we don't hear the same qualms with him. So I like that you started off with, this is gendered, and not just that, there's certain expectations as far as men dressing professionally and women. I feel like it goes so much deeper. There's double standards when it comes to men and women, period. And to your point, and that's the first thing I thought of, I was like, so I've been a managing broker, I'm a coach, and I've been an agent. Now, before I go into everything, I am a girly girl. Now, I am a girly girl. I've always believed, Oscar Wilde's quote is one of my favorites, where he says, you can never be overdressed. He says, you can never be overeducated or overdressed. So I'm like, I got a lot of degrees. I'm always in school, and I will always, no matter what, be like the person like, is she going to the opera? Is she in the opera? So I am a dressy person, but what I recognize about our industry is that I've had men in our office, again, when I was managing broker, who looked like they had just gotten off of a bicep machine from the gym. Like, they're in flip-flops, they literally have sweat stains, and they're brokering multi-million-dollar deals. No one even says peep, beep, or anything. It's just like, yeah, okay, sure, whatever, you're busy. We're happy to work with you. But to your point, it is something, again, this is why I just thought this was so interesting, because for women, there are always unwritten and very written rules of, okay, you need to have on something that looks like a suit, but then if it's pants, now you look too masculine. If it's a dress, now it's not powerful enough. There's all of these rules and codes, again, some unwritten, some written, and I don't subscribe. Now, even though I'm a girly girl, I don't actually subscribe to any of them. And this goes into just the fact that since my doctoral research on personality types and studying some of the top 1,000 agents in the nation and seeing that all of the top 1,000 agents that we studied, they understood how to profit with their personality. That's my whole spiel, profit with your personality. But that was so important to see that in our industry in particular. I know I was talking about other industries like with Mark Zuckerberg, but the bottom line in our industry, what I consistently see is top producers know who they are. And as a result, people know, like, and trust them, right? So, because that's the main thing with sales. We want people to know, like, and trust us. And that starts with us knowing, liking, and trusting ourselves, being authentic, in other words.
A lot of the comments I got just on the initial piece was just kind of, and my argument in the original piece was, if we don't have people that dress differently and look differently than us working in our brokerages, aren't we just kind of surrounding ourselves in an echo chamber? Okay. And how is your business going to grow and have new and fun and exciting ideas if you are surrounding yourself with people that, look exactly like you and think exactly like you? And then oddly enough, in the piece, all of the comments below just kind of were like people adamantly repeating themselves. You have to dress professional to be professional. And there wasn't a whole lot of explanation, but there was a lot of implied that, if you're sloppy, it's, that you don't care. And then, there's a lot of definitions of what's sloppy, okay, or what's in style. There were like a lot of implied that if you don't care about the way you look, that your intelligence isn't where it should be. And there were just so many different like strange comments and, generational comments, a lot of boomer comments about, it's not showing respect if you don't dress a certain way to the client. And I said, this is a bigger conversation and we need to dive into this more because I don't think people are hearing the initial question or concern.
I love that you said that. And I did see that piece about the echo chamber, just such an astute comment because, and I hate to divide this along generation lines just because we know there's always outliers. There's always exceptions to the rule, but I did pick my dad's brain about this. So my dad worked at IBM during its heyday, and IBM was notorious for IBM Blue, which was, yes, their brand color, but it was also the fact that you wore a blue power suit and it was expected. He mentioned that when he became a manager, and he was one of the first Black managers there, his supervisor pretty much said, listen, if you don't have at least one suit and white shirt, don't bother showing up again. Like, so wow. There was, to your point, and for that generation, he is a baby boomer. There was a level of dismissiveness that happened right out the gate with how you looked and how you dressed. So I get it. And just literally, I talked to him at lunch today about this because again, this topic is very intriguing. And yeah, he still thinks the same way. As we were leaving the restaurant, someone was coming in with their pants, not sagging, but they were a little lower than what he liked. And he immediately was like, oh, going into respectability politics and so forth. But generationally, the guy looked fine. It wasn't like grotesque and his things were showing. It was like, okay, well, that's just the style, not a big deal. The point in all of that is I hate to do the generational thing, but it actually is real. This generation, I love that you put the demarcation between the pandemic even, because even though I'm a girly girl, I can say that I even dress down a little more than I have on a dress actually right now, but this is not it's more casual than I would have before the pandemic. So just the whole working from home more, that even changed the culture quite a bit. So there's a lot of layers to this, but I do think it's, unfortunately, it's more baby boomers, maybe older Gen Xers as well. But my grandmother, who's a part of the greatest generation, she's cool with it. See, she gets it though. That's different. They're different too. So I don't know. What do you think? I think so many things.
Yeah.
I've had so many thoughts.
And it's interesting. So, when all this was going on, I went out and visited my 91-year-old grandmother in assisted living. And, I always tell her what I'm writing and what I'm working on. And I wanted her opinion. And she talked about from the perspective of, she was a manager, worked in retail for years and years, an employee that worked for her. And her manager approached her and said, you know what, this woman is not dressed appropriately. We need you to talk with her about what's appropriate to wear to work. And this was a situation where it was, the woman had limited income. Okay. So that's another layer to this. And grandmother said, I remember just feeling like such, a heel talking to this woman, telling her she needed to dress more professionally. And she said the next day, this woman came in and she was wearing kind of like a really over the top party dress. But when she talked to her about it, it was, well, this is the best dress that I had to come in. So, that's another layer of it. And she, she told me like she did not want to have that conversation with her because she felt like it wasn't appropriate because, again, some people are coming from different places, different walks of life. One of the things that kind of like took off in the comment section was that this showing respect to clients, and that you have to show up, dress to the client, show respect to the clients in order to be professional. But then that whole comment line got myself thinking, well, I know a lot of agents that dress very professionally, but they are not ethical and they do not treat consumers well. And we can use the example of, all of the agents that are having lawsuits right now with the Long Island case, an investigation that happened over, I think that they investigated over 3 years and 60 different brokerages. So those were very professionally dressed agents that weren't acting very professional. So that again brings me back around to your point. It's about your knowledge, your confidence, and what you bring to the table as an individual to help consumers. And it's kind of really unfair, one, to judge a book by its cover and determine whether or not someone's intelligence or professionalism is based on how they're dressed and what their physical appearance looks like. And to me, it doesn't seem very fair, when you're approaching that even from a recruiting standpoint, again, because I don't think you're giving people a fair chance.
Absolutely. So, there is this, I think through it, and to your point, again, coming out of the real estate industry just for a few moments, it's so easy to see. And I think the tech industry, again, they have probably the most relaxed visual dress code, right? So they're doing presentations to the masses, and starting from Steve Jobs, all the way down, it's just very, very casual. And again, it was seen as edgy. It didn't take away from the intelligence or anything. So I think these are, I don't want to say fables that we have perpetuated, but maybe I will, because it's still very interesting. Again, just looking at the top 1,000 agents in the nation, it's very interesting to see that they get it, that they can show up as their authentic self. And when we're looking at all of these different personality types and everyone's just coming as who they are, and they recognize, listen, because sales is particularly residential sales, it's a human to human relationship. You really do, again, have to have that know, like, trust between people. It actually is helpful when you come across people that have these biases based on someone's attire. That actually allows you to fire them. So it's weird that you steer clear of probably a toxic culture, toxic environment, because if they're getting this bent out of shape over clothes, which we could change, right? Maybe you guys give us an allowance. Sure, we can go shop at, whatever store you feel necessary. Sure. But in the grand scheme of what we're trying to deliver to our clients, if you get this bent out of shape, I don't think I need you in my sphere. I don't think I need you, because this means other things that are more weightier. Again, we're going to have a lot of conflict. So it's almost a blessing in disguise when people have these hard stances on very superficial things, because that is superficial. We know people, again, and so this is my own personal experience as a broker. So many of our top producing agents, particularly, again, the men, always look like they had just gotten out the gym, the shower. They looked rough around the edges, and that was their prerogative. And they still got the deals done. So I don't like that. Again, there's this double standard when it comes to women. And even the fact that, like you said, it looked more like they were going out at night, even the type of labels that are put up. So you're close to calling us looking trashy. That's right. Kind of the road you're going down. I don't like it. I don't like it. And I don't think I think those are very antiquated and superficial beliefs that help us to eliminate you. So whether it's your brokerage, which means it's probably on that side of the curve where it's declining, maybe not, but I don't know. I don't know that you have longevity as the culture, and culture continues to change and evolve, again, particularly post-pandemic.
There's a lot of things happening right now in our culture that are discussions that I feel like that push there's this group of individuals that is kind of pushing women backwards. Okay. And I use the example of what's going on in the Missouri House of Delegates, where there was a very large discussion and voted upon discussion about whether a woman could wear sleeveless tops, and if it was professional for the women to go in there and do businessing and politicking in a sleeveless top. And I'm just like, I have to keep asking myself, is this 2023? I don't even understand. Sometimes I feel like we're just in this really bizarre time. And we are having all of these conversations again about modesty and style and personal preference. And another thing that was said in some of these pieces that came out was me asking the question of taking a look at dress codes and making them less gendered and more inclusive, that I was virtue signaling, that I was trying to be the most woke person in the room by asking these questions. And it was very dismissive, like you just said. So if you did change your dress code policy to make it more inclusive, what harm would it cause, as long as you still had your standards in place of what you expected, people to show up in, but again, making it more inclusive. The fact that some people just kind of rally against the idea of diversity and inclusion and having these conversations about, well, we can still sell homes in a very, I use the example, I know a lot of people that can sell a home in a tracksuit and that are very, very professional. There are many people that are selling homes dressed for the nightclub, which is very popular right now on television. So, what part of, talking about how a woman is dressed, what is making you so uncomfortable that you would need to say that this is something that we need to rally against, that you do need to dress professional, that you need to go back to these traditional kind of nostalgic values? And I think that's a conversation we really need to look at.
You bring up something very interesting. And again, I'm still even going back to my conversation today with my dad at lunch. It almost feels like with him, which may or may not represent his generation, but it's so hard coded because he worked for 30 years before retiring. So just hearing you speak about it, I get it. I get that if majority of your life, this is what you've been told, how do we have a paradigm shift for you And that's the part where, again, that's a really interesting feat, because it's not, we know it's not true. And you also said something key, and that is a lot of the women agents, the female agents on particular TV shows, that is almost the look they require. I've had some of the agents I've worked with have been on various shows. I've had some people approach us about shows, and they actually do want that look. There's a certain look they're looking for. So it's a big walking contradiction. On one end, it's like, don't look this way, but then it's also, but that's the only way we're gonna give you, free publicity, basically.
Right.
So
give you a show.
It's a nightmare. It's all, and again, it still hinges more on the woman's side, the female side.
Oh, it's absolutely ridiculous. And that's the conversation I wanted to have. The conversation was never, and again, a lot of people were kind of implying, you can't just show up sloppy and wearing, I think one guy talked about, he met a younger agent, and the agent was trying to show a house in flip-flops and a cartoon character t-shirt, and he was just appalled. But again, he had clients, he was showing houses.
Exactly. And if they don't have a problem, and maybe, there it is, maybe that's it. And I get it, every office wants to have their own standards, but maybe it has to be less emphasis on what we, as the industry, we think, and what's the response of our clients. Because if they're not only working with us, to your point, he's showing people properties, but then they're referring people to us.
Yeah.
I think we have our answer. Ding, 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 ding.
I think we need to trust the consumer. I think that if you're looking at it at the perspective, well, I wouldn't want this person representing me in my brokerage, that you really need to take a step back and really think about what your priorities are, because to me, that's really coming from like an entitled place of privilege of looking at that your perspective is the only right way to do business. Right. And I just really, really want to emphasize, there was a really deep conversation about that. The way that you're dressed and how you hold yourself professional is the best way to serve your community. And to me, the best way to serve your community is actually to take actionable steps like Habitat for Humanity, be a vibrant part of your community, and take action for change for important parts of the community, to volunteer, go to local district zoning meetings and actually know what's going on. That is something that shows you're a professional and serving your community. You don't serve your community by putting on a suit and selling houses. You serve your community by being part of it and trying to make it better.
Rachael, that's it. I mean, that's exactly it. And again, I keep saying I don't want to put a generational divide, but I do recognize that is more of a older generational thing, these symbolic representations of professionalism versus we're talking about the actual meat. What is the substance of what we're trying to say when we say serving the community? And that, again, is helping people buy homes and sell homes and making it affordable. So the moment we move away from that and we're focused on, again, this superficial look, that actually does nothing for anyone. I don't know.
I know it's such a big conversation that you really have to look at from a lot of different perspectives, and you got to get past that knee-jerk reaction. What is she talking about? That you could sell a home in a tracksuit. That's why people compare us to car salesmen and things like that. And I'm like, no, we really got to think about this from a lot of different angles. And there's a lot of brokers right now that are struggling with recruiting, retention, how to offer value to their agents. They're really kind of examining culture. We have a lot of people that are kind of like straddling, big box franchises that are trying to justify those franchise fees. Okay. Independent brokerages that are really trying to stand out in a sea of a lot of different shops in their local areas. And to me, this is something that is an important thing to be considering. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're a business owner, you need to have these conversations, even if they make you very uncomfortable, and even if they go against everything that you've been taught up until this point.
Absolutely, because I know every market is different, but for the markets, so I'm in Atlanta, and the markets that are like ours, or some of, we call ourselves the tech capital of the South, even though I know people from Austin would say, no way. we rival with them. But anyway, we're the Hollywood of the South. We are the medical center of the South. So in some of these kind of metropolis-like places, you'll find that those type of companies, they're attracting people that, again, have a different mindset about dress and culture. So I think it's more important for us to focus on how do we attract the customer, the client? How do we connect with them? And, I remember when I was on the sales side and I was an agent, one of my first deals was with someone who saw my University of Michigan license plate. I think I even had on some type of paraphernalia, some type of swag that said, go blue, which is our little motto at University of Michigan. And this guy, before he even really stopped the car, he let down his window, yelled out, "Go blue." And from there, not only was I his agent, but then I was his girlfriend's agent and various family members. So it's more about the connectivity. And I think, to the point of everything you're saying, I really do think the smart thing for us to do, especially if someone says, hey, I'm struggling with standing out, having a unique selling proposition, retention, recruiting, then we've got to change the focus from how does this make me look? And how do I want people to be a reflection of me, and center it on the client? How can we reflect the client? And of course, now that gets into fair housing. I don't mean reflect from a standpoint of race or religion or anything like that. But again, some of the more organic things, like here in Metro Atlanta, how do I reflect this wonderful metropolis culture, right? So I think that's the shift. So the shift is not just I want my agents to reflect me and my office, but how do we reflect and connect, really is the word, connect with our clients, our community, so that we can serve them. If we change our focus, I don't think the outfit, the uniform is as much of a conversation, or at least not a negative conversation.
One last point I wanted to just get your perspective on, and that's the safety perspective for women. I found it really interesting. I had a piece that was the previous week. I had discussed a woman that went missing in the DC area. And she was missing for 4 days before her job actually called to look for her, before, her family was looking for her. It was very unfortunate circumstances, but I basically wrote in that article about, how women in America today have a whole different set of safety issues that you have to think about and consider every time, especially agents, when working with the public, that are unique. And just even on the home front, there's things that you need to really pay attention to and think about as a woman. And I was really, really just surprised that the more attention and comments from agents that they felt comfortable speaking on was about how someone was dressed, what's on the wrapper, than actually the safety of the women out there working in the industry. To me, that's another really interesting conversation. Is I'm going to keep writing about safety issues for women, especially safety issues for women agents, because we have to keep this conversation going, because every year women go missing, or women are harmed, or women are murdered. And we're working with the public. This has to be top of mind constantly. And a big part of safety that a lot of women talk about is how I'm dressed, how I'm prepared. And I think that plays into this whole conversation about dress codes and preparing for work and things like that you said is very much a double standard. I don't know too many men that have stories where they were approached during the pandemic and they had a woman approach them and say, hey, can you pull down your mask? Because I want to see your pretty smile. I don't think too many men had that experience, but I know a lot of women that were approached by men during the pandemic while wearing masks and were said comments like that. So to me, that's another part of the conversation is, everyone's really quick to say, oh, she's dressed for the nightclub, she can't work for me. But I challenge brokerages that have a strong, this is how you have to be dressed to work here. Well, what's your safety policy like? How long would it take for you to realize your agents are missing? What are you doing to help the agents in your office that are women be safer doing the job that they do, or all the agents in your office doing the job that you do? Is that part of your business plan? Is that part of your business model? To me, that's another part of the conversation too, about just the culture in the industry too, that we have to keep going. Let's push past thoughts and prayers when bad things happen. Let's actually make change around these topics.
So great, Rachel. And it's funny, well, not haha funny, but in so many of the classes that I've taught over really now the past 10 years, I a lot of times will have, especially when I'm doing social media classes and we're talking about how to market your business and market yourself, I usually always do a piece on safety and the various apps that our firm should have so that we can stay in contact and find people and have a geolocation of where they are, or at least your family. If your office isn't doing it, although a lot of offices that I had an opportunity to train with, they started incorporating these things because, to your point, some of the dress codes actually put you in harm's way, in that now I can't really run like I would be able to if I had something else on, if I had the liberty to wear something more relaxed. Or for example, maybe I don't have pockets, right? So I didn't happen to have my pepper spray today because the dress code required me to wear something, again, that wasn't functional for my safety. So I love that you're including that in this conversation. I know personally, I've talked about this a few times. I had to file a restraining order. Again, you're marketing in a public space, people can find you pretty easily. It's so dangerous. I had a situation even once when I was showing a property with a client. We walk into a property, and this was during the great, quote, recession. So there were squatters in a lot of homes at that point. It was pretty prevalent in a lot of parts. So we walked into a home that had a squatter and there was a gun on the table. It was so scary. And all we could do was just kind of back out of there. Thankfully, I had on gym or tennis shoes, that weren't clicking and clacking because I'm wearing heels. Yeah. So those seem like minor things, but it is a real part of this discussion. So thank you for even including that and just drawing attention to it.
Just trying to make people aware that this is part of the job that women have to deal with all the time. And the way that you look, and there's so much in the marketing aspect that's pushed, you've got to be on social media, you've got to look a certain way, you've got to be, this very polished, shiny brand, but there's a lot of risk that comes with it as well. And that's part of the conversation.
So good. So vital. You're right. You're right. And it's there's been enough agents that have not only been assaulted and raped, but even murdered, and including men, not as many, but still it's alarming. And no, anytime we talk about, so when I teach a social media class, I'm 10,000% trying to have us almost not be in as much of our advertising, because we've had people say, as we find out, oh, they targeted me. So I actually even have, unfortunately, this is the letter for a gentleman who, prowling, stalking. I mean, this is his court case. This is ridiculous, but trying to remove our images as much as possible, because the great thing about real estate is we don't actually have to sell it or even get name recognition by being in the footage. So again, that goes into a lot of stuff. And how we dress, I want people to have freedom and liberty to be themselves and be authentic. But I also want us to know there's predators out there. There really are.
It's a extremely complicated conversation. It's definitely not you just have to dress professional to be professional. That's not the solution to this. this is, we have to have these conversations in our industry. We have to keep talking about it. It's not a one-time conversation and then the problem's solved. We have to keep having this conversation over and over again. We have to keep applying it to as we move forward in the future, and also take in consideration things that have happened in the past. So I want to keep the conversation going. I don't want to be shut down by people saying that this is just, a woke kind of conversation, because no, it's not. And I want people to keep questioning and asking, well, why is it this way? Who told us things have to be this way? Or why do you think it needs to be this way? Because, we have some of the best people, and I think this, as you mentioned, interviewing the top producing agents, we have some of the best personalities and people and humans working in this industry that are just excellent examples of how to help consumers and really capture the spirit of what this is about. But in order to help those people be successful and to keep adding value as our industry, as we have so many discussions about commissions and the future of commissions and all of that in the future, we have to have these conversations and come together collectively to make this space a place not only better for consumers, but better for people wanting to join into the future of this industry and offer value for everyone and positive experiences for everyone from all different walks of life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. And thank you. I have to applaud you for, again, not making this a one and done conversation, for really giving this some legs so that people are thinking and talking about it. And, the interesting thing, even about the people that had backlash and are being somewhat dismissive, this is forcing it at least to still be a part of a conversation. It may not be one that they like, but it is a needed conversation, as you said. So hopefully people will be more open and prioritize.
I want everyone to kind of grow from this, learn from this. I want maybe get a little uncomfortable with this conversation and let's have some really good discussions, but we definitely have to keep the conversation going.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it on so many different levels. From that perspective, I love editing your pieces that you send to us. We really appreciate your contributions to Inman. Thanks again for your time.
I'm really happy to help. So thank you, Rachael. Thank you.